What do you do when you spend your life searching for the ideal partner, someone to support you and your children, only to discover you've married a monster? Join us as we dive into the harrowing story of Jessica Lawson, a mother whose quest for love turned into a fight for survival.
Welcome to Crime Time and Justice, your gateway to the dark and twisted world of crime, where we uncover the shocking tales of deception, betrayal, and justice. Jessica Lawson sat in her office, surrounded by shelves lined with books on relationships and human psychology. As a licensed marriage counselor, she had dedicated her life to helping couples navigate their challenges. However, her own life felt far from perfect. Recently divorced after a tumultuous marriage marked by betrayal and heartache, Jessica was raising two children, Lily, age 6, and Jake, age 9, on her own. Each day was a balancing act between meeting her clients' emotional needs and managing her own family's chaos. In quiet moments, Jessica often reflected on the complexities of love and commitment. She felt a deep sense of responsibility as a mother who wanted to provide her children with a stable home. Yet lingering insecurities haunted her. Was she capable of finding love again? Would she ever be able to trust someone fully after the pain of her past? One evening, seeking a break from her routine, Jessica decided to visit a local coffee shop that had become a favorite spot for its cozy atmosphere and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It was a welcome change from the demands of her day-to-day life. As she settled into a corner with her notebook trying to gather her thoughts, she noticed a man across the room. His name was Noah Mitchell. Noah was strikingly handsome, with an easy smile that lit up his face. As their eyes met, he flashed a warm grin that made Jessica's heart skip a beat. They struck up a conversation that flowed effortlessly, filled with shared laughter and stories of their pasts. "I can't believe you're a marriage counselor," Noah said with a teasing glint in his eye. "Does that mean you're going to analyze me now?" "Only if you're hiding any deep, dark secrets," Jessica replied playfully, feeling an unexpected spark between them. He was attentive and genuinely interested in what Jessica had to say, making her feel special in a way she hadn't felt in years. The chemistry was undeniable. He seemed to understand her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Over the next few weeks, their bond deepened rapidly. They enjoyed long conversations over coffee, shared meals at local restaurants, and took leisurely walks in the park, where they talked about everything from their favorite books to their dreams for the future. With each passing date, Jessica felt herself falling deeper for Noah. However, as she found herself increasingly captivated by Noah, doubts began to creep in. Whispers from friends and family echoed in her mind. "Are you sure this is wise?" her best friend Claire had asked one evening over wine. "I just worry you're moving too fast after the divorce." Jessica brushed off their concerns, eager to embrace the excitement of romance, a feeling she had longed for after her painful past. "I know it seems quick," she reassured Claire, "but it just feels right with Noah." Within 5 weeks of their first meeting, swept away by passion and hope for a fresh start, Jessica made a hasty decision. She agreed to marry Noah. As they stood together at the altar, surrounded by close friends who smiled with cautious optimism, Jessica couldn't shake the nagging feeling at the back of her mind. As they exchanged vows, she scanned the faces of her loved ones, some beaming with joy while others wore expressions of concern. Could she really trust this man? And would she be able to build a future without repeating past mistakes? The initial excitement of marrying Noah Mitchell began to fade as the reality of their life together settled in. At first, Noah was everything Jessica had hoped for: charming, attentive, and deeply romantic. He showered her with affection and made grand gestures that swept her off her feet. They spent cozy evenings together, lost in conversations that lasted until dawn, and their weekends were filled with family outings that delighted her children. However, as the honeymoon phase wore off, subtle changes in Noah's behavior became evident. What had once felt like passionate love started to morph into something more possessive. He began questioning Jessica about her whereabouts, often asking why she needed to meet friends or go out without him. "Don't you think we should spend that time together instead?" he would say, his tone casual but with a hint of insistence that made Jessica uneasy. Jessica tried to brush off her discomfort, convincing herself that Noah's concerns stemmed from a desire to be close. After all, he had been through a lot in his own life and might have been struggling with insecurities as well. Yet, the little comments began to pile up, creating an undercurrent of tension in their home. At dinner one evening, while they discussed their plans for the weekend, Jessica mentioned a coffee date with Claire. Noah's expression darkened. "You really don't need to see her that often, do you?" "I thought we were building our life together," he replied, his voice tight. Jessica felt a pang of frustration. "I love spending time with you, but Claire is my friend. It's important for me to keep those connections," she insisted, trying to maintain her independence. Noah's demeanor shifted. He crossed his arms tightly over his chest, and Jessica could sense the walls closing in. "It just feels like you're trying to keep me out of your life," he said, his voice low and unyielding. In that moment, doubt crept into Jessica's heart. Was she indeed trying to keep him out? Or was it simply healthy to maintain friendships outside of their relationship? But with Noah's gaze piercing through her, she found herself questioning everything: her needs, her desires, even her rationality. As weeks turned into months, the dynamics of their relationship shifted dramatically. Jessica's friends began expressing their concerns more openly. "You seem different," Claire remarked during one of their calls. "Are you really happy with Noah? I just feel like you're not yourself lately." Jessica hesitated before answering. "I am happy, I think. He just cares a lot about us being together." She felt defensive, wanting to protect the man she had married, but also aware of the nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach. Gradually, Noah's behavior escalated from subtle possessiveness to outright aggression. During a disagreement about parenting styles, he raised his voice for the first time, sending shockwaves through Jessica's heart. "I'm the man here. You need to trust me," he yelled, causing Lily and Jake to stare wide-eyed from the living room. That night, as Jessica lay awake in bed, she replayed the argument in her mind. She felt conflicted. She loved Noah, but was terrified by the change she was witnessing. Could this be who he truly was beneath the charming exterior? To cope with her confusion, Jessica threw herself into her work and her children, hoping that the love she felt for Noah would return to its former glory. But every moment spent together now felt like a balancing act. One wrong step could lead to an explosion. As she observed her children navigating this new reality, fear began to creep in. Would they be safe in this home she had envisioned as a sanctuary? Would they witness more moments of anger from the man who had once seemed so perfect? Jessica knew she had to confront these feelings head-on. Ignoring them would not make them disappear. Yet each time she considered discussing her concerns with Noah, dread washed over her. What if he reacted violently? What if he turned on her? With each passing day, the weight of uncertainty pressed heavier upon her shoulders. As the months passed, the atmosphere in Jessica's home grew increasingly tense. Noah's charming facade was slipping further, revealing a man who was increasingly controlling and volatile. Jessica often found herself second-guessing her every move, feeling like she was walking on eggshells. The home that was meant to be a sanctuary now felt more like a prison. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, Jessica returned home to find the house in disarray. Toys were scattered across the living room floor, and the remnants of a hastily prepared dinner lay abandoned on the kitchen counter. Lily and Jake were sitting quietly in front of the television, their faces illuminated by the flickering screen. "Where's Noah?" Jessica asked, her heart sinking. "He went out," Jake replied, not taking his eyes off the show. Jessica felt a wave of unease wash over her. She could sense that something was off. As she cleaned up the mess, her mind raced with thoughts about what might have happened. Had they fought again? Was he drinking? When Noah finally returned home, his demeanor was immediately apparent. He walked in with an air of frustration that filled the room like a dark cloud. "You're late," he snapped, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the chaos. "I had to finish up some work," Jessica replied slowly, trying to keep her tone calm. "I'm sorry if I worried you." Noah's anger flared at her response. "You always have an excuse. It's like you care more about your job than your family." The words struck Jessica hard, echoing her own fears and insecurities. She felt her heart race as she tried to respond. "Noah, But before she could finish, he slammed his fist against the wall, causing both children to jump in shock. "You need to get your priorities straight," he shouted, his voice reverberating through the house. In that moment, something inside Jessica snapped. She could no longer ignore the reality of her situation. The man she had once seen as a protector had turned into someone she feared, a man whose temper could explode at any moment. "Stop it, you're scaring the kids," she shouted back, her voice shaking but filled with newfound determination. Noah turned to her, astonished by her defiance. For a brief moment there was silence, a stillness that hung heavy in the air. But then he stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You think you can talk to me like that? You're nothing without me." Jessica felt a wave of terror wash over her as she realized just how far gone their relationship had become. The love she once felt for Noah was being overshadowed by fear and confusion. She looked at her children, their innocent faces watching in wide-eyed horror, and knew she had to protect them. Over the next few days, Jessica tried desperately to regain control of her life. She reached out to Claire, hoping for support and understanding. During their coffee date, Jessica confided in her friend about Noah's escalating behavior. "I don't know what to do anymore," Jessica admitted, tears brimming in her eyes. "He gets angry over nothing, and I feel like I'm losing myself. I'm scared for my kids." Claire listened intently, her expression serious. "You need to take this seriously, Jess. It's not normal for him to behave this way. You deserve better." Jessica hesitated, but ultimately nodded. Deep down, she knew Claire was right. This wasn't the life she envisioned for herself or her children. She needed to find a way out. But confronting Noah was daunting. He had threatened her in the past during arguments, warning of dire consequences if she ever doubted him or challenged his authority. The idea of facing him again filled Jessica with dread. One night, as she lay in bed next to Noah, sleep eluding her, she felt trapped between two worlds. One that offered safety but came at a terrible price, and another that promised freedom but also uncertainty. That night marked a pivotal moment for Jessica. She realized that ignoring the whispers of truth would only lead to greater pain. The time for change had come. The tension in Jessica's home reached a boiling point as Noah's behavior became increasingly erratic and aggressive. It was no longer just the subtle possessiveness. It had escalated into outright hostility, leaving Jessica feeling trapped and fearful for her children. The once warm and inviting atmosphere of their home was now thick with anxiety and dread. One evening, Jessica returned home to find Lily sitting at the bottom of the stairs, looking upset. Concerned, Jessica knelt beside her. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked gently. "I don't want to play with Daddy anymore," Lily replied, her voice small. "He plays too rough." Jessica furrowed her brow. "What do you mean by too rough?" "When we're wrestling," Lily explained, fidgeting with her hands. "It just feels uncomfortable and sometimes it hurts." Jessica felt a chill run down her spine. The playful wrestling matches she thought were innocent had taken on a different meaning. "Honey, are you sure? It's just playtime, right?" she asked, desperately hoping her daughter was mistaken. Lily shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "Sometimes he gets mad when I don't want to play. I'm scared." Jessica's heart raced as she processed Lily's words. Doubts flooded her mind, and she recalled moments when Noah's temper flared, how he had raised his voice during arguments, how he had dismissed her concerns. Could it be possible that something darker was happening behind closed doors? That night, as she lay in bed next to Noah, the weight of her daughter's words hung heavily over her. She turned to him, wanting to voice her fears but feeling paralyzed. "Lily mentioned that she feels scared sometimes when playing with you," she finally blurted out. Noah's eyes narrowed as he turned to face her. "What do you mean?" "She's just being a kid," he replied dismissively, his tone defensive. "Kids need to feel safe," Jessica said cautiously. "Maybe we should talk about how we play with them." But Noah's anger flared instantly. "You're questioning my parenting? I know how to have fun with them," he shouted, sitting up in bed, his fists clenched in frustration. Jessica felt a surge of panic. "I'm not saying that. I just want to make sure everyone is comfortable," she insisted, trying to keep her voice steady. Noah's expression twisted into a scowl. You're overreacting. This is ridiculous, he spat, dismissing her concerns as if they were unworthy of discussion. The atmosphere crackled with tension as Jessica lay there, realizing that Noah was unwilling to hear her or acknowledge anything that threatened his perception of control. She felt trapped in a nightmare, torn between love for her children and fear of the man who had promised to care for them. Days turned into weeks, and the situation only worsened. As Noah's aggression escalated, Jessica started documenting every incident, the harsh words exchanged, the moments of intimidation during arguments, and now Lily's fearful reactions. She knew she needed evidence to protect herself and her children should it ever come to that. One fateful night after an explosive argument where Noah had threatened Jessica over something trivial, she finally reached a breaking point. Fear gripped her as she realized that this was no longer just a matter of emotional turmoil. It was a matter of safety. After Noah had stormed out of the room, Jessica took a deep breath and dialed Claire's number with shaking hands. "I need help," she whispered when her friend answered. Claire sensed the urgency in Jessica's voice. "What's going on? Are you okay?" "No," Jessica admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm scared for me and the kids. I don't know what to do." "Listen to me carefully," Claire said firmly. "You need to get out of that situation. You have to protect yourself and your children." Jessica felt a surge of clarity wash over her as she listened to Claire's words. It was time to take action. She could no longer ignore the truth that had been whispering in the back of her mind for far too long. The next day, while Noah was at work, Jessica gathered important documents, birth certificates, financial information, and any evidence of his abusive behavior, and stashed them away in a safe place. She also made an appointment with a local domestic violence hotline for guidance on how to navigate this precarious situation. As she prepared herself for what lay ahead, Jessica felt a mix of fear and determination. She knew it would not be easy to confront Noah or even leave him, but for the sake of her children and herself, she had to be brave. That night, as they sat down for dinner together, a tense silence hanging over the table, Jessica felt a newfound resolve building within her. No matter what happened next, she was ready to reclaim her voice and protect her family from the darkness that had infiltrated their lives. The days that followed were filled with tension as Jessica prepared to confront the reality of her situation. She had taken the first steps to protect herself and her children, but the thought of facing Noah filled her with dread. As she navigated her daily routine, she remained vigilant, trying to keep the atmosphere at home as calm as possible for Lily and Jake. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Jessica sat at the kitchen table staring at the pile of documents she had gathered. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her chest. She felt a mix of fear and empowerment, fear of what Noah might do when he found out she was taking action, and empowerment from knowing that she was finally doing something to reclaim her life. Jessica had called the domestic violence hotline several times, gaining invaluable insights into how to navigate her next steps. The advocates had provided her with resources and safety plans, emphasizing the importance of having a support system in place. They encouraged her to confide in friends and family about her situation, but Jessica hesitated. She worried that admitting the truth would only invite judgment or disbelief. However, she knew deep down that she couldn't face this alone. The following day, she decided to reach out to Claire for more than just support. She needed a plan. "Can we meet?" Jessica texted Claire. "I need to talk." When they met at their favorite coffee shop, Jessica felt a wave of relief wash over her as she settled into a booth. Claire arrived shortly after, concern etched on her face. "What's going on?" Claire asked, her tone serious. "You sound stressed." Jessica took a deep breath, feeling vulnerable as she shared everything: the emotional abuse, Lily's fears, and Noah's growing aggression. "I've been documenting everything," she said, pulling out her notebook filled with notes about incidents and conversations. "I know I have to leave him, but I don't know how." Claire listened intently before responding. "You're doing the right thing by gathering evidence. You need to have a solid plan if you're going to leave him. Have you thought about where you would go?" "I have a friend who offered me a place to stay if it comes to that," Jessica replied, nodding. "But I'm terrified of what he'll do when he finds out." "Let's make sure you're prepared," Claire said resolutely. We can work on a safety plan together. You don't have to do this alone. With Claire's support, they drafted a detailed plan that included safe places Jessica could go, people she could reach out to for help, and steps for leaving in an emergency situation. The more they talked, the more Jessica felt a sense of empowerment building within her, a determination to protect her children and herself. As they finalized their plan, a sense of urgency crept into Jessica's mind. She knew that confronting Noah would be a crucial step in reclaiming her life. However, the thought of facing his wrath made her heart race with fear. That night, as Noah returned home from work, Jessica steeled herself for the confrontation she had been dreading. She had decided it was time to express her concerns about his behavior and insist on seeking help together for the sake of their family. "Can we talk?" Jessica asked as he walked in, his usual demeanor already tense. "What now?" Noah replied sharply, tossing his keys onto the table with irritation. "I think we need to address some issues in our relationship," Jessica began cautiously. "I've noticed that things have been really tense between us lately." Noah's expression hardened. "What do you mean?" "I'm just trying to keep this family together." "I'm worried about how you've been treating the kids, especially Lily," she said, summoning every ounce of courage within her. "She's mentioned feeling scared during playtime with you." Noah's anger flared instantly. "You're believing a child over your husband? This is ridiculous." His voice rose menacingly as he stepped closer to her. "I'm not saying that," Jessica replied firmly but carefully. "I just think we should consider talking to someone about it. Together. For our family's sake." "No!" he shouted, his face contorting with rage. "You think I need help? You're the one who needs to learn how to be a better wife." In that moment, something inside Jessica shifted. She felt a mix of fear and defiance surge through her veins. "Noah, this isn't healthy for any of us," she insisted, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. His expression darkened even further as he stepped closer again, invading her space. "You think you can challenge me? You'll regret this," he warned, his voice low and threatening. In an instant, all the warnings echoed in Jessica's mind. The advice from the hotline advocates about recognizing dangerous behavior and knowing when to reach out for help. She realized then that this was not just about their relationship. It was about safeguarding herself and her children. "Enough!" Jessica shouted, surprising even herself with the force of her words. "I will not let you intimidate me anymore. I'm taking control of my life." Noah recoiled slightly at her outburst, his surprise quickly morphing into fury. But this time Jessica stood firm. "I will get help for myself and my children, whether you want it or not." Turning away from him in that moment felt like breaking free from chains that had bound her for far too long. She didn't know what would happen next or how Noah would react, but she was ready to fight for herself and her children. After the confrontation, the atmosphere in the house simmered with tension. Jessica could feel the storm brewing inside Noah, but she also felt a sense of relief wash over her. For the first time in a long while, she had spoken up for herself, rejecting the fear that had clouded her mind. The decision to confront him marked a turning point in her journey, a step toward reclaiming her life. The following days were fraught with uncertainty. Noah became increasingly distant, retreating into silent brooding. When he was home, he would often ignore Jessica altogether, leaving her to manage the household and care for Lily and Jake alone. This new silence felt ominous, but Jessica remained resolute. Concerned about Lily's earlier comments, Jessica decided it was time to take action. She couldn't shake the feeling that her daughter needed to be examined. So she took Lily to the hospital for a thorough checkup. As they waited in the sterile environment of the pediatric unit, Jessica's heart raced with anxiety. When it was their turn, a kind nurse guided them to an examination room. The doctor conducted a physical examination but found no visible signs of abuse. After the appointment, though relieved there were no physical wounds, Jessica felt an overwhelming sense of fear and frustration. While there were no visible signs of abuse, she understood that emotional and psychological abuse could leave scars just as deep. That evening, as Noah returned home, Jessica felt a surge of determination. She couldn't allow him to continue harming her children or instilling fear in their home. After putting Lily and Jake to bed, she picked up her phone and dialed 911. "No, you're not calling anyone," Noah shouted as he lunged toward her. As Jessica struggled to keep the phone steady, a scuffle ensued, and she feared for her safety. The officers on the other end of the line could hear the commotion and raised voices. "Ma'am, stay on the line. We're sending help," one officer urged urgently. Within moments, police arrived at the house. They stepped inside just in time to witness Noah's aggression as he backed away from Jessica when he saw the officers. "Step away from her," one officer commanded firmly. Noah froze, his bravado instantly retreating as he glanced between Jessica and the officers. "This is my house. You can't just barge in here," he protested. "We are here because someone called us for help," another officer replied coolly. "We need to ensure everyone is safe." After assessing the situation and hearing from Jessica about her concerns regarding Lily, the officers informed her that they would need to take Noah into custody based on her report. "We're going to do everything we can to ensure your safety and hold him accountable," one officer said reassuringly. "But we want to be transparent with you. In cases like this, it can sometimes be challenging to pursue charges without physical evidence or corroborating witnesses." Jessica nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I understand," she replied, her heart heavy with the reality of the situation. "We just felt it was important to let you know," the officer continued gently. "We deal with many situations like this, and we're here to support you throughout the process." Jessica felt an overwhelming rush of relief as she stepped back from Noah's looming presence and moved toward the officers for support. She took a deep breath and began explaining the situation, the abuse, the threats, and everything that had led her to this moment. After Noah was taken away by the officers, Jessica took a deep breath and gathered Lily and Jake close. "We're going to be okay," she assured them, though uncertainty lingered in her heart. In the following days, Jessica worked with a legal advocate to file for a restraining order against Noah. The process brought its own challenges but reaffirmed her commitment to shielding her family from further trauma. She also sought therapy for herself and her children to help them process their experiences. As they began attending sessions together, Jessica felt a sense of empowerment growing within her. She realized that while the path ahead would not be easy, she was taking control of her life and prioritizing her children's well-being above all else. In quiet moments of reflection, Jessica acknowledged how far she had come, from feeling trapped in an abusive relationship to reclaiming her voice and agency. The road ahead would be filled with obstacles. However, for the first time in years, she felt hopeful about the future. Moving forward meant not only seeking safety but also fostering an environment of love and support for Lily and Jake. Together they would navigate their new reality, one step at a time. Thank you for watching Crime Time and Justice, where we look at everyday crimes no matter how big or small. Remember, every story matters and deserves to be heard. Together we can raise awareness and advocate for change.